Hi everyone, this is Shannon with Thermaltake, and today we're introducing a brand new chassis series, the Suppressor series. The Suppressor series is a very silent series chassis, but also is TTLCS certified, which means that it has to be able to fit a ton of liquid cooling gear or just a massive liquid cooling system for the most hardcore enthusiast gamer. So with that in mind, we designed the Suppressor series as a very silent case to start. However, you can remove specific components to allow it to match all the high-end liquid cooling you would need. So let's go ahead and dig into this new Suppressor F51 model and see what the new Suppressor series has to offer. With the new Suppressor series, the first thing you'll notice, it has a very clean aesthetic, very flat, clean lines, ensured that it will fit in with your common home theater components the same way it would with a high-end extreme desktop gaming machine. Now let's dig into it and see exactly what we have. One of the first things you'll notice is on the top of the front panel, you have your I/O. The fan speed down and up are by press button, the headphone jack, the microphone jack, hard drive activity LED. You have your square power button, which as you can see has a halo around it. This actually lights up blue when the system's powered on. Then you have your reset button here. It's recessed, so it's not easy to press by accident. However, you can press it quite easily if you're attempting to. USB 3.0 super speed dual ports on the front, has a 20-pin internal header, and then USB 2.0 high-speed ports for your legacy devices and things that aren't up to the new 3.0 spec. Now let's look behind the front panel and see what we got here. Now the chassis front panel on the F51, you can see it's brushed, but it has a lot more going than just its aesthetic. As you open it up, you can see it's quite thick, and it has sound deadening material integrated into the panel itself. This helps eliminate noise from either drives in the front or anything possibly coming through, such as fan noise. That means you get a much quieter environment directly with this front panel. Not to mention, we also integrated a neat little feature down at the bottom, this little rubber strap. When you close the panel, you can actually hook it onto the tab at the bottom of the chassis, and it keeps the panel from opening during transport or anything like that, which keeps it from possibly getting damaged or anything like that during transport, during traveling, even when you're moving it around your house. That's just a little safety measure we added for convenience. Once you pull that open, you can see you have dual 5 1/4 bays along with a huge space above it. That's actually to ensure your radiators don't encroach onto your 5 1/4 bays. You can actually have a really thick radiator and fans up here without too many problems. Now below that, you have your fan filter. Nice mesh fan filter. That's great, but when you pull it out, you'll see you actually have a second fan filter there. That's because when you shut the door, you can actually pull some air from the side venting here. Once you pull that out, we got yet another thing to show you here, which is a huge 200mm fan. That's there by default. However, if you decide you want to go liquid cooling, you can see you have slotted holes here so that you have plenty of compatibility with all the way up to a 360 or 420, which is a 3x120 or 3x140 radiator to ensure that you can fit pretty much the biggest liquid cooling you want straight on the front of this chassis by ripping the drive bays out. That's similar to something you've seen in other chassis like our Core series. Now let's go ahead and move to the side panel and talk about that. Now with the side panel, you'll see that we actually have a magnetic dust filter. Now this is something you'll also see up top later, but this allows you to install fans in the side or pretty much anything else, and it still keeps it nice looking when it's stuck on the case because you don't see any screws or anything like that, and it keeps everything filtered nicely. However, by default, take a look at this panel here. You can see there are 4 screws in place. And this panel is actually quite heavy, quite beefy, because it actually has a layer of sound deadening and a sound deadening panel in place, which keeps all the noise from your internal components here, keeps all the noise from coming out and possibly disturbing your gaming environment or your listening space if, let's say, this is somewhere in a quiet room and you're running it for a media center. So this is all stuff we took into account when we designed this chassis for you. Now, beyond that, once you're inside the panel, you can see you have 2 6-bay drive bays. These are toolless drive caddies, which allow you just to snap it in place with no screws. However, if you really don't feel secure with toolless, we even have holes so that you can still screw them in place. So we offer you either option. These drive caddies do fit 2.5 and 3.5 inch drives. And both of these 3 packs of drives can be removed completely and allow liquid cooling all down the front, along with the two 5 1/4, which also on their own right can fit two 2.5 drives each or a single 3.5 drive. So we give you tons of compatibility when it comes to drive fitment, but also, just like you saw in the V71, when you take these drives out, you can actually take this drive tray, mount it vertically behind the drive cages themselves, out of sight with two drives in place, whether it be an SSD and a hard drive, two hard drives, what have you. The choice is yours. We'll show you that in a bit, so we're going to set this drive tray aside. Moving deeper inside the chassis, one thing you'll notice is we offer plenty of cable pockets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to pass cables through your motherboard so that you can have it behind the tray, which also has a decent amount of space back here. Then you have your foam padding where the PSU rests. That allows it to mount to the chassis while reducing harmonics or any annoying noises that might come from a vibration within your power supply. Basically, we did everything possible to really try to eliminate noise from your system within the F51 case. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the lower filters. We tried to filter everything, and we even did a little work down there as well. Now here you can see the dual filters. One in the rear below your PSU, making sure you get no dust through there, and then one in the front. They both can be removed rather easily in order to be cleaned, washed out, and then just slid right back in place. And this just keeps any dust bunnies from under your chassis or around your floor or anything from getting up into your case and possibly causing any issues, and just keep your system as dust free as possible. Now let's go ahead and look at what we did for the top of this case. I think that's something we really did that's really neat. Now here you can see we have 3 sound absorbing pads. They're actually screwed through the top like you'd normally mount a chassis fan, but these come default in place. So if you just want to run the stock 200mm fan in the front and the 140 in the back, you'll be able to have plenty of airflow and no issues for a nice quiet system. However, let's say you want to go extreme. You want to put a liquid cooling radiator or a bunch of fans on the top. Let's say 3 120s, 3 140s, or even 2 200mm fans. You can fit any of those in the top. But if you decide to push it with a radiator or something like that, you can go ahead and unscrew these directly out of the top, which we'll show you shortly. They're found right under a magnetic fan filter, and these just drop right out so that you can set them aside for later in case you decide to go more silent or what have you in the future. And they're not all one piece, so you can actually remove them 3 different sections, 1, 2, 3. Now let's go ahead and flip to the top and take a look there. On the top, to make sure you kept a nice clean line, we also installed a magnetic fan filter, as you can see here. When you pull that off, you can see you have the mounting holes for the previously mentioned silent pads. So these little modules can be pulled out, even just one. If you just want a single 120 fan here, here, or here, or 140 or 200, doesn't matter. You can just drop that out and then put a fan in place and get you some extra airflow. But let's say you want a super silent. You can leave these in place, and this fan filter just tops it off, gives it a nice clean line. But let's say you decide you want to install a radiator. You drop those liquid cooling parts into place, screw them all down. You still put the fan filter in here. It has a nice little groove it sits in, and you still have your clean line. Even with a radiator installed, you'd never know from the outside. It still carries a very clean, simple appearance. And another cool feature is right at the front. As you can see, you have your I/O panel here. Now in order to keep you from having to remove it or anything like that, when you pull your front panel, you can actually see front panel is completely off now, and you have your I/O directly in place, which means you don't got to worry about possibly having to reroute cables, things like that, just to take your front panel off and mount liquid cooling or what have you. All this stuff stays in place, so it's an even more convenient chassis to build in and an easier chassis to set up. Now the other side panel of the chassis, or the rear panel as I call it, is nothing to scoff at either. This is a big, thick panel with heavy sound deadening on it. This allows it to keep your chassis nice and quiet. And also, being that it has that thick sound deadening, it's actually very heavy and very solid filling panel as well. So it actually adds some sturdiness to the overall feel of the case. Now once you remove it, you can see here that we have cable tie downs all around the chassis, all around the grommets, along with various other bits, including one that's very, very important, which is if you remove your drive trays out of the front, Let's say you remove all your cages, install a big showcase system, especially on the windowed version of this chassis. I think this will be more important, is going to be you can mount these vertical drive trays, snap them in place, and not have any drive trays up there and still be able to run 2 drives, whether it's SSD, hard drive, SSD, or just dual hard drives. Doesn't really matter, that's your choice. You can mount them directly vertically and have them completely out of sight from the front of the chassis. And that's a real advantage if you're building a showcase system. And with that, you have the Suppressor F51. I really hope you like this new chassis from Thermaltake, and if you do, or if you'd like to learn about other new products, please feel free to join us on our social media channels or our TT community forums. I look forward to seeing you there, and thanks for watching.